Hi and welcome to Moto. I'm Moshe Levy, and ever since posting my new article in the March 2022 Rider magazine about how Honda's Trail is helping me recover from the original variant of COVID-19, which I contracted back in February 2021, I've received dozens of emails and messages from other riders who are also suffering from long-haul symptoms, and they're asking me what, if anything, I've done to get better. Now, if you haven't read that piece, just click on the card above or in the description below where I've posted a link. But anyway, I have learned a few things and improved my health substantially since last year when I got sick. And that's what this video is all about. Specifically, we're going to go over how I'm trying to get over my brain fog or limited processing abilities at speed while on the bike, and how I've also essentially cured my parosmia or severely distorted sense of smell. Now, here's a recap of my COVID story for background, and then we'll get into the recovery stage. Keep in mind as I tell the tale that obviously we didn't know then what we know now. So back in mid-March of 2020, my wife was a nurse at the hospital with the most COVID cases in New Jersey, specifically in our little county of Bergen, which at the time had more cases than 38 US states combined. We were only a few miles outside of New York City, which was then the hotspot of the entire world. So she gets home from work one day and she's visibly shaking as she explained what she'd just seen on her shift. And I remember she said something like, you know, after 24 years as a nurse, I've never seen anything like this. There are dead bodies piling up in the wards and refrigerated semi-trucks stationed outside to haul the corpses away. And we're running out of protective gear and running out of ventilators, and the doctors and the nurses and all the staff are exhausted. We can't keep up with this. I've never seen anything like this in my life, and I'm scared to go back to work. Now, in response to what she was telling me, I made a video back in April of 2020, Motomouth number 57, and I was imploring riders in high-risk areas to just stop riding temporarily. My thesis was that if a crash were to happen and you wound up in the hospital, you were not going to get anywhere near the level of care as you'd expect in normal times, because the staff were beyond overstretched and you'd be in closer proximity to the infected. It's actually pretty interesting to go back and read some of the comments to that video from April 2020. It's just a flu, it's just in New York, it's not going to ever come over here where I live, and I'm not planning to crash today, so none of this matters. I mean, lots of real nuggets of wisdom from the collective. Anyway, at that time, our little family was in a very high-risk category, to put it mildly. As COVID raged across the land and lockdowns ensued, Terry continued on as a full-time nurse treating the infected, while I was responsible for managing an essential supplier to the Department of Defense, which under federal law meant we couldn't shut down under any circumstances. And worse, we just moved into a fixer-upper. And so we had a tidal wave of various contractors rampaging through the house every day for months. So throughout it all, there was no isolation or quarantining at home for us. I was finally able to secure a vaccination in February of 2021. Now, truth be told, having made it through 2020 unscathed, I reckoned I was invincible, like Tool. But as luck would have it, on the morning day of my scheduled vax, I woke up and I had flu-like symptoms. Testing revealed that I was positive for COVID-19, so I began my mandatory 2-week quarantine at home, and it honestly felt just like the flu, no big deal. But 17 days after that positive test, well after the flu symptoms had basically disappeared, a new wave of symptoms emerged which would change my life indefinitely. The worst symptom was extreme vertigo, which is an extreme feeling of rapid dizziness and confusing disorientation and total loss of balance. Sometimes moving a half an inch in any direction would feel like falling off a tall building. My whole body would tense up and break out in a cold sweat and then shake uncontrollably, which should only then further exacerbate the vertigo. I was completely incapacitated. I was unable to perform even the simplest tasks by myself. I had a bunch of other stuff too. My short-term memory just basically evaporated. I couldn't remember anything, basic information, the names of your children. I had to use the GPS because I forgot where I lived. I forgot all the codes and passwords that are in your head that you've been using for years. It was pretty scary, unable to function basically. And thus began the arduous journey back to normalcy. starting with learning how to walk again from, recovering from the vertigo. It sounds farcical now, but walking speed was initially a challenge, which took a solid week of practice to overcome. I was stumbling forward at 2 miles an hour, and it felt more like warp speed. My mind felt like an old 386 computer that was just stuck on an application. I had to stop every few feet to sustain my balance and to just reassure myself that indeed I was only walking. All the while, a persistent feeling of dizziness dominated every waking hour, punctuated by roiling headaches that could not be appeased. These throbbing headaches were always aggravated by barometric pressure in the atmosphere. So if it rained, I was completely out of commission. The only escape was really to sleep, and when I closed my eyes, bright bursts of hot white color would interrupt my rest like lightning strikes, but with more pronounced duration. And any sound, no matter how faint, would immediately wake me up. This sort of strange new sensitivity to light compounded the booming migraines, making any surroundings outside of a soundproof, pitch black room totally unbearable. My sense of smell was completely screwed up, especially cooked meat, which all smelled to me as if it was rancid, rotten. Even hot water in the shower had that same smell. It smelled like a dumpster fire, or like rotten avocados, or all sorts of different smells which are completely revolting, even though the food is good. So I wasn't really able to enjoy eating anymore. It was a fairly depressing period, to say the least. Anyhow, the days dragged into weeks, dragged into months, shuttling back and forth between various doctors, hoping to get a clue about what was ailing me. ENTs, neurologists, and other specialists at the top hospitals in New York City were baffled because this disease was affecting so many people in so many disparate ways that a common treatment path forward wasn't available. However, one thing they all agreed upon was not to get vaccinated until a myriad of tests were performed and potential cures were attempted. The doctors explained that they had seen some of their patients with similar symptoms relapse after the vax, while others reported feeling better after the vax. There seemed to be no rhyme or reason to it. So I embarked on every treatment they recommended. MRIs, steroid treatments, epi maneuvers to try to alleviate the vertigo, dietary changes, medications, supplements, meditation. You name it, I tried it. None of it worked. Now by this time, this is several months in, I'd graduated past walking slowly and into running in short spurts. I could drive my car again slowly, and eventually I dared to ride my motorcycles for short distances, if only to get the old juices flowing again. But riding with the long COVID symptoms was a profound handicap. The headaches and the dizziness could burst like a thunderclap in my head, ferocious, debilitating. Most worrisome was this brain fog feeling, which would appear suddenly, obliterating my ability to focus on anything for more than a few seconds. It happened to me once while hustling my 600-pound BMW RT through a mountain sweeper around here, where I wound up in the opposite lane facing oncoming traffic, unsure of how I got there to begin with. I would suddenly forget the basics, like which side my front brake lever was on and which side the clutch was on. So my brain was frustratingly dysfunctional. Adding to these mental challenges were the physical trials. Now, I've been riding successive generations of BMW's RT series for over 15 years. I've had oil heads and hex heads and now wet head, but suddenly I felt intimidated by the size and the weight and the speed of my RT. Riding at low speeds was unsteady at best, and anything quick or technical just scrambled my processing speed to the point of paralysis. It was a watershed period in my life. It took me years of dedicated practice at riding to achieve some small degree of proficiency at it, and it was very difficult for me to accept that many of my abilities had just simply vanished. So riding my motorcycles, which was once almost the most delightful activity I could imagine, had now changed into something which was clearly dangerous. At this point, I was over 6 months post-infection with what we thought then was a fading antibody count that would leave me vulnerable to reinfection. My team of doctors had exhausted every treatment option that they could think of and now turned to the vaccine as the last hope. So I made an appointment and got the Moderna shot and braced for the worst, but instead within 3 days, Most of my symptoms had simply disappeared. I felt a lot better. However, some of the symptoms remained, including more limited processing speed while in motion and the distorted sense of smell. So I want to cover how I'm dealing with both with varying degrees of success. With regards to limited processing speed, there was only a few things I could do, and the main one was to slow way down. Now, I knew I wanted to keep riding, but I have to slow way down until my symptoms and skills improve substantially, just like walking slowly eventually led to running again. That's why I got this Honda Trail, and riding it is building up my abilities to ride my big bikes again, slowly. I'm not what I was before, but I am getting better incrementally through practice. In fact, since last winter, I've built up this little fleet of slow bikes, including the Trail and this 1980 Puch Newport that I just finished resurrecting, for lack of a better word, through 2 winters. And now I picked up this 2004 Harley 883 Custom, which I'm fixing up in time for the spring season. There is another thing I'm doing, which is a sort of a concentration game, which over time I can sense improvement in my ability to focus. Essentially, it involves getting into a comfortable seated position, closing your eyes, and simply counting back from 500. And each number is done slowly. Let's say 1 number per breath. You visualize the number in your head, and you count back, and you see how far can I get without my mind wandering off into some other thought or some foggy feeling overtaking me and losing concentration. In the beginning, I could only get a couple seconds in, but now I can make it pretty far. And with dedicated practice, I feel that translating into better riding, better awareness while on the road. The bottom line on all these different flavors of slowness is that they keep me moving on too, but they're still fun in their own way. And you can't get in too much trouble on any of these unless you do something really stupid. I mean, slowness is in their character. But the ultimate goal, of course, is to feel comfortable at speed on my big bikes again, on my RT again, really specifically. It's a process, but it is working over time. Now, as for the parosmia, I am now fully cured, and I owe it to a doctor friend of the family who suggested reading Dr. Scott Fromm's article entitled Olfactory Training and COVID-19 Loss of Smell, published in Perio Implant Advisory. If any of you need a copy, just contact me as shown at the end of this video, and I'll be happy to send you my copy in PDF. I'm going to spare you the medical jargon and reasoning behind Dr. Fromm's idea and get right to the cure part, which has been used successfully prior to COVID-19 to treat patients with olfactory issues. Essentially, you sniff 4 essential oils for 10 to 20 seconds each, twice per day. The oils are rose, lemon, eucalyptus, and clove. You do this for 12 weeks, according to the article. I can report complete success with this method, which I started in November 2021. Before, all meat smelled rotten, and hot water in some cases smelled like foul avocados. It was a horrible ordeal just to eat meat or take a shower. But now all of that is over with. I wouldn't say my sense of smell is perfect, like pre-COVID level, but it's definitely 95% of the way there. And eating meat and showering are no longer dreaded activities. All of that for 40 seconds a day and less than $30 in oils with no drugs required. I'd say that's worth being happy about. So that's my story. Judging from all the messages I've received from the Rider article, some of you out there have fully recovered, while others are still going through rough patches. I hope that as time goes on and we share what works and what doesn't work with each other, we can all move forward to a healthier future together. In the meanwhile, I hope this video was helpful to others out there with similar symptoms. Until next time, keep the shiny side up, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more of your favorite Moto gear reviews.